Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I want to talk to you about the premiere of Loki Season 2. The first episode of Season 2 is called Ouroboros, and it picks up right where the end of Season 1 left us. Loki's dealing with the fact that Agent Mobius doesn't even know who he is in the wake of Sylvie's actions at the end of time, at the end of last season, which resulted in this changed timeline. And he has to run from him, and the security force is trying to grab him because he's seen as an intruder. He doesn't get very far before he jumps over a ledge onto a passing sky taxi thing, which ends up crashing right through a window on a different level of the TVA, and he's there for a moment before he gets violently ripped away by unseen forces, only to return there seemingly a moment later, finding himself recognized once again, as if the changes that caused him not to be recognized seemingly a moment earlier hadn't happened. So he tries to get to Mobius, but struggles to do so because he keeps getting pulled through time. He makes it to an empty meeting room where there's a huge mosaic featuring different versions of the face of Kang, or as he's called in this, the one who remains. Meanwhile, Mobius, Hunter B12, and others are having a heated discussion in a different version of the same meeting room about how to proceed, given that now the timeline is branching like crazy, and after a few moments, Loki just pops into the room, and before he can be apprehended or pruned, he manages to get a hold of a pruning stick, which he smacks into the wall, causing its top layer to dissipate, revealing the heads of Kang beneath it, just like in the other version of the room. He and Mobius then leave the room and start discussing the situation, and Loki tries to explain to Mobius about Kang and the whole multiverse situation, as well as the fact that everybody who works at the TVA has had their memory erased at least once. He and Mobius then go to visit Ouroboros, aka OB, to inquire as to how to stop Loki from time slipping, which they each hilariously end up having separate conversations with OB about in the past and the present, when Loki gets pulled to the past during the start of the conversation in the present. If you see that scene, what I just said will make sense. OB then takes them to the temporal loom, which is not in great shape given that it's struggling to handle all the branching timelines. As Loki and Mobius prepare to take a very life-threatening set of steps necessary to carry out OB's instructions to keep Loki from time slipping, Loki gets pulled into the future without the pruning stick he was given for the purpose of pruning himself at the right moment in order to make it possible for him to stop time slipping, putting Mobius at risk of not surviving his part of the procedure in the past, also known as the present, the past from Loki's future perspective. Okay, fortunately, in the future, Loki runs into Sylvie, aka himself, who prunes him, sending him back to the past just in time to save Mobius, whom he then tells that they need to find Sylvie. We then see that all of the time agents are going all out to try to find her as well. Sylvie, meanwhile, finding herself on Earth in 1982 after exiting a time door, goes into a McDonald's and says that she wants to try everything, which is where the episode ended. So I really enjoyed Loki Season 1. It gets a lot of hate for some reason as part of, I guess, Phase 4 that people didn't like, or part of the Disney shows that people seem to all think are terrible, which is insane because they're not. Well, some are better than others, but I really liked it. People complained that Loki, the character, was cucked and turned into a sniveling, whining, non-Loki type of character, but that's not what I saw. I saw a story in Season 1 of a character that was coming to terms with who they'd been all their life versus who they could be, and what they had wrought in the universe versus what they could have brought about, and realized that they had sort of been failing to live up to the sort of important destiny that they've always thought they had, and who was in the process of basically turning over a new leaf and trying to be a force for good, as corny as that sounds, or you could say an entity that affected the universe positively versus negatively, which is basically a redemption story, which I love. And in the hands of Tom Hiddleston, it's greatly executed. So I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed his sort of on-screen chemistry with Owen Wilson. And I found the actress who plays Sylvie, another version of Loki, to be very good. And I found the fact that he's sort of repulsed by and attracted to her at the same time to be interesting, not only because that's always interesting, but because she's him. And she's looking at the situation completely differently, especially after they meet Kang at the end of time. And I just found that to be very compelling and interesting and to be a story worth telling. And I was looking forward to season 2. So I'm coming at it from a different perspective than that of a lot of people who just didn't like Loki season 1, where I did. And I found the first episode of season 2 to be serviceable. I didn't find it to be anything spectacular, especially because it was supposed to be a season premiere. I was a little disappointed. There's nothing wrong with it. It picks up right where season 1 left off, which is great. And, it seems to have the same elements in terms of the fact that the chemistry is still there between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. And, Loki is very much committed to stopping Kang, who, of course, is out of his mind and whose machinations will destroy everything if he's not brought to heel. So that was good. And the scenes with Obi, played, of course, by recent Oscar winner Jonathan K. Kwan, were cool, just because he's so funny and because they end up having, like I said, this one conversation, but in different pieces, parts, where the past part of it informs the future part of it simultaneously. It was very well done. But I wasn't wowed by it. I found it to be serviceable. And, I'm hoping that things pick up from here. Because, like I said, I really liked season 1, and I'm keen to see more of this story with this character. But that's really it. There isn't a lot more to say, so I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to review next week's episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.